Could you tell us about some challenges or fears you may have encountered when you were considering community employment for your loved one?
She has what we call episodes where she gets overheated and hot and may actually faint. So the workplace has bought a wheelchair in case she needs to be wheeled out of the building. They've also put a camera on her desk so they can monitor her activity and make sure that she's safe. And they also provided chairs with arms so that if she did feel faint, she could sit down and hold herself in the chair. And what else have they done? Oh, she gets overheated, so they put a big fan right there on her desk. And they have really been great as far as looking into what she needs and addressing that. They actually have a place called a wellness room where she can get out of the workplace and, rest for a few minutes. And so, yeah, the Human Resources Department has been really helpful with all of that kind of stuff. And if she does have issues, personal issues, she'll talk to HR or myself, and we'll talk all about whatever issues they were at far as interactions with other employees.
One of the challenges that we faced, and that I faced, I think that stood out the most to me was, well, there's a few things. Being that I am a single parent, I'm a single mother, so I had the challenge of the issue of transportation, right? So one of the things that as Ethan was transitioning from high school and adult years, and we were still exploring the opportunity for him to have some collegiate level experience because he could. Like I continued to want to pursue that to help him reach, a next level for him. But I also at the same time had the challenge of, that was the path we were going, and we weren't really looking for long-term employment at the time. So it was trying to find a coach and an opportunity that would be willing to accept a maybe shorter term. I'm just a huge advocate for trying to help him fulfill his dreams, and that was also a challenge, is finding something in the sports arena. But we were again super blessed to be able to find him go to the work with the director of operations for the Akron Rubber Ducks. So even though it was short term, he did that for 2 summers in a row between the collegiate experience. But the transportation was a big issue for me. I work full time. It's challenging. So, getting him there and there, but that situation worked itself out. So that was, one challenge that I faced for him. And then just also making sure it's the right fit. That also comes into fears, right? So challenge and fears, there's kind of a gray area between the two, because fear in itself can be a challenge. We have to overcome these fears to let our child go out in the community where we're not hip to hip with them, and it's hard because we have to have a level of trust in that. So overcoming those fears that he could go out in an environment. Number one, putting him in a car that was someone, not me. You're trusting another driver. That's a fear and a challenge to overcome. And then also having him go to, a work site and trusting that he's going to be treated well. It's the right place for him. If, there is any type of red flags that come up, just trusting that there's communication with the employer. So there's a lot of fears involved especially for any parent that hasn't gone through that experience. It can be very fearful. But I will say, once he was exposed to that, a lot of that fear melts away as you see that it's working out, and you see that they're happy, and you see that you have his direct boss. I had his cell number, but Ethan has his own phone, so just starting that communication. So overcoming those hurdles and those humps to get into a different routine, is fearful, and it's also a challenge to families as well. So those were some of the things that, I faced, even though they were short-term assignments. But again, he could not have landed in a better place where he was with the rubber ducks. That's his world. He was working in operations and maintenance. And, I really feel like it almost took him, well, for me as a parent, to allow that transition to happen, to give him that opportunity to be in that experience, in that environment, to be like, oh, wow, it's not something that I could have probably ever anticipated or expected until we were living it, right? Till we created it, we were living it. And that's when those challenges and fears just started to melt away. And I'm like, wow, this is just amazing. And my child's happier than he's ever been. Not that he was always happy, but he's just like, he's in his element. So it's just about allowing and just keeping moving one step at a time, keeping moving forward. And the other thing I do want to mention is it really does take a village, right? So other people help me see, it took connection and community and bridges when I met with other people to share his dreams, his aspirations, and the opportunities for those doors to open. I didn't open those doors by myself, but it took me to cross that bridge with him in order for those doors to open. And so that's one of the other things, like, just to have those partnerships with community and connection, and the resources and your relationships within the provider communities to help you navigate and get to the point, to have those doors open. That's a big piece to stay connected. And it takes a village. It really does.
Thanks for sharing. It sounds like those challenges and fears can be overcome, once you take that first step.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
absolutely. We did it 2 summers in a row. It worked out perfectly because I didn't understand the transportation when I said, yes, let's do it. But it all worked itself out. It brought opportunities that I was not anticipating or aware of. And it just was a huge burden and release off my shoulder. And I don't want to say that it's a burden, but when you're a single parent, you're trying to navigate the situation by yourself and you're working full time. The answers appeared after we kept moving forward and taking those steps to make this happen for him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Patty.
So yeah, with our son, a lot as the challenges and fears, I think the fear is more on the parent side sometimes than the child side. When we were in the high school situation before we started it in the employment, going as we're progressing through and getting prepared for that adulthood, we tried to look at what are we going to do? We had no idea what we were going to do. We knew that graduation was coming, and we had no idea with college, with supports, with anything, until we started connecting to some local agencies. Then we started getting direction. As mentioned, was Special Olympics, like some community events and some services. They started giving us some direction, but still the fear as a parent making those steps was huge. And then some of the challenges you think were going to be a challenge were actually not the actual challenges that you got faced with, so that was kind of like a surprise as well. You try to anticipate something that may actually not occur. So when Josh, our son, went into his first job, one of the things I found, his very first job, they gave him a safety manual to read. Well, he read it front to cover. He had it memorized. So when he saw another person in the employment field in the room, working next to him, maybe not following that safety manual exactly, he thought he should tell them about that. So then we had to work through some of those kind of challenges, like when working with other people, becoming into the workforce an employee, maybe talk to their supervisor and just, that kind of thing. But we didn't realize how, he took his jobs very, very seriously in the sense of, they gave him a manual, he was going to use it. But the workforce, that was his first job. He worked in like a mail sorting job. And one of the things there, he's tall. He's very, very tall. And their unit, their section was very small. The area he had to pick up mail and move it and then sort it. It was tight and he kept banging his knees. Well, he kept silent about that, but then we started seeing bruises on his knees and he started saying how sore he was. And we asked, well, what about, what's going on? He finally, said, well, it's too tight. Well, so then we talked to the staff and the supervisors and managers. They worked with us on that. And, they accommodated him and his concerns with his workplace. So that was the first time we ever had, as an employment, the staff was actually working with him to accommodate, to make it a comfortable place to work. And they worked through, when situations would come up, they'd work with us. When he went to his next job, we had gone to, his second job, the fear again hit me about him going to another job. Here we're going to start all over again. How are they going to be with him and everything? And he was there about 2 years. Well, and it worked out well. He got to know people. He knew some kids there from Special Olympics. Again, in the community, he knew some of the coworkers, which was very helpful too. And they had, and other people would work with him in the workforce, the other employees there. He got to know other people as well. So that was very good. He did give, when he went to leave, he was going to a job that was he said that was his dream job, his next job. So he gave his 2 weeks there, but he did give him his 2 weeks. And then he proceeded to tell them everything that maybe they could change to help the other employees. And they remembered that, they took notes and remembered that. So he went to his dream job. But then like 2 years later, they had moved from their location to a new location, this previous job. And he reached out to them because they were in a brand new building, and they gave him a tour of this brand new building. And they said, look at this. We added windows. You said that, in the last place, we didn't have windows. We didn't have air conditioning. Some days in the warehouse would get to be like 110. And he told them about that. They added, they have a place that has air conditioning. They pointed out everything that he had listed. They pointed out how they had improved it for the employees. And this wasn't so much, he thought he was going back for an interview for a position, and they just basically said, the job's yours. We just want to make sure we're accommodating you, and it was like kind of, that blew him away, that, and well, blew us away, I should say. He was like, okay, but each job has made that accommodation. I do share some of the concerns, transportation. Some shifts he's had was evening shifts, and sometimes that was a little concerning with transportation. But it's those fears that you work around. He was able, through support services, he was able to get his driver's license. It did take 2 years. And it was an ongoing practice, but we practiced many times going back and forth to his job site before he ever did that on his own. But it did take him 2 years. Several attempts to get his driver's license, but he did with services, and through OOD actually helped him with some of the evaluations and stuff to get through that. But each job has presented its own challenges, more fears for me than for him. When he went for this past job, we asked him, do you need us to go along for the interview? He says, no, I got it, Mom. So, and he was this was, after being in the workforce since he was 22 to now, so 12 years, and he felt comfortable enough to say, I can do it. Of course, we were on standby, but he got the job, and they've been, again, very accommodating. He's afraid, he's in a deli situation. Told me before he'd never wanted to work deli. A year ago, he never wanted to work deli, but then this new job, he got the opportunity to work in deli, and he's like, yeah, and he loves it. The only thing he was afraid of was the slicers. And they said, you don't have to be trained on that for a year. You don't have to. And anything that he is afraid of, they've kind of stepped back and say, you don't need to do that right now, maybe later, you know, when he's ready and when he's comfortable, but he's finding his niche very well at what he's doing right now. But like I said, a lot of the fears were more me than him. And then each challenge that has come up hasn't been one that has been like overwhelmingly that we couldn't, you know, come over. It was a challenge we would, you know, it got resolved very easily and quickly, usually. Some of the harder ones, you know, they still weren't that huge for us that, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, we can't do this. You know, it was very, with the staff and the employment, deployers, and they met us halfway on mostly everything, if not maybe 80% of the way. You know, it made it very, I'm not sure if I want to use the word easy, but it made it much smoother for us to make some of the job transition along the way. It was, you know, I think overcoming my fears was probably the biggest, was the biggest part.
Thank you.
Mhm.
But it sounds from the three of you that there's courage and flexibility and communication are really important components to taking this journey toward integrated employment.